So weighing preservation questions against public safety issues like demolition, the condition of structures in very distressed or depleted neighborhoods, there's no science to it. And I think this is really an emergent sort of area of interest for planners who may see preservationists intruding as a little bit of a nuisance, and preservationists who are really starting to relearn what preservation is, because we're moving from thou shalt not to maybe, and that's like a big philosophical leap. I mean, so we're making a big philosophical leap as practitioners from conserving everything to sort of being facilitators of change. So stewardship questions, which buildings should stay, which buildings should go. And I don't know if there's like a really great formula. As a practitioner who's worked in a lot of distressed areas in St. Louis and East St. Louis and other places, what I really see, like, we really have to get down to block by block microdynamics. And one of the things they say a lot is, looking at very small scale impact. I know developers, planners, officials don't always like to hear the phrase block by block. Sometimes that's like an activist cry thrown up against bigger projects and more strategic planning. But really, when you're looking at which buildings to pull down, that's crucial, because you're looking at buildings that could be catalysts, corner buildings, or buildings that conserve a very intact block that are in the middle of the block. These might not be the best examples of an architectural style or the best and most historic buildings in a city, but they have an economic and cultural link to a broader plan or a broader possibility for a neighborhood. Those are the ones I think should be saved. The isolated buildings are often marginal, easily expendable by some measures, but those can get tricky too, because if you're looking at a neighborhood like Old North in St. Louis, parts of Kensington and Fishtown here in Philadelphia, you've seen people take one or two buildings and do amazingly creative, maybe not so traditional preservation activities by incorporating vacant lots and vacant land around the buildings into redevelopment. So it's tough. There is not a pat answer. It's really all about, I think, which buildings have the most chance, the biggest chance at economic recovery. That's something that you're not really trained as a preservationist necessarily to think about. It's also something a lot of planners aren't necessarily trained to think about, because we're not trained to think about making money necessarily off of real estate. And they're not always trained to think about a tiny building, one little 25-foot wide building in a big scheme. Sometimes doesn't seem very important, but you take 3 or 4 out on a 2-block stretch, and all of a sudden you have holes that are going to lower property values and discourage investment. It's really, I think, all about drilling down and looking at things one by one, block by block, being very careful, not to impede progress, but to try to bring progress to the table. But it's tough, and it's really not something mainstream preservation has been good at lately.